Every international student taking the SAT has told me this. Let's see if that's the case with you. They say the math is easy, but the English can be challenging. The vocabulary can be difficult. So, the first thing that comes to mind is learning more vocabulary. There are big books of lists of words where you can memorize them and learn. There are flashcards, there are apps, lots of apps that tell you to review your words and whatever. Maybe you've done them, maybe you've done a lot of them. You've memorized 500 words, 600 words. But still, when you go to that exam, it doesn't click. It doesn't come up. That word didn't show up. Or worse, it did show up, but the question tricked you. The sentence was tricky and you still picked the wrong answer. And this is one of the counterintuitive things about preparing for the SAT. Because you've been told to memorize as many words as possible. But that's not the whole story. Knowing a lot of vocabulary is amazing, it absolutely helps. But the method is the problem. The problem with this method is brute force memorizing, only memorizing a list, is disconnected from any context, from any story, from any reasoning and meaning. So there's no real use to it. And the SAT is constantly testing your reasoning skills. They want to see if you can connect this word to a story, to a context. No, it's not testing whether you can remember what ephemeral means or what ubiquitous means. These heavy words that are famous for SAT takers. So if you're a student who wants to get into that dream college and put in the work, understand the right methods of learning, and do your share of the work as well, then welcome. As I always say, there's no magic tricks, but there are methods that can be improved. And if you're that kind of student who works on themselves, let's start the video. Today I'm going to show you how to build vocabulary the smart way and also solve a question for you to see how that works out. Hi, my name is Hossein, and I've been helping international students score better in the SAT. Now, here's the first pillar of learning new vocabulary. Context beats memorization. Here's something that bugs a lot of international students. We see a passage and we see 4 options. Sometimes we think, okay, which one of these words do I know the definition of? Do I know what they mean? That's the wrong approach. The right question is this: what is this sentence, the passage itself, telling me that the blank should mean? What should it be? So you should guess what fills in that blank before even looking at the options. So you need to be finding clues in the text, because every single words in context question has clues in the text. It is solvable by only looking at the text, right? There's a reason the text is there. So you read the text and you think, okay, what's logical? What's the reasoning in this sentence? What should come next? So instead of translating the options in your head, while reading the text, think to yourself, is this passage talking in a positive tone or a negative tone? The blank that should come next, is it going to be something nice? Is it going to be something good? Is it something the author likes? Or is it something negative? So this is happening before you translate anything in your head. Translation slows us down. Next, pay attention to transition words. For example, when you see however, despite, yet, these are contradiction words. So when you see these, just stop and think, okay, what comes next should be the opposite of what was before this. Let me give you a very, very simple example right here. Many students struggle with their exams, but some students have no problem with them. See, the first part says students struggle, but the second part says they don't have any issues. we have a transition that's signaling contradiction. You have but, however, yet, despite, words like that. There are other kinds of transitions, of course. For example, the cause and effect transition. Words like because, therefore, as a result, as a consequence, consequently. So these show you that what comes next should logically follow from what was before. Even punctuations are doing you a favor there. When you see a dash or a colon, it's basically a restatement of what was before. Or it could be an exact definition of it. So that helps you guess the word in the blank. Here's an example for this one. The mayor's new urban plan was widely criticized as blank. Colon, it tore down 3 historic libraries to build a single parking garage. So, what choice completes the text with the most logical and precise word? Ambitious, short-sighted, economical, popular. So here we see the colon. It tells you that what comes after it, the clause after it, will explain exactly what the blank means. So it tore down 3 historic libraries to build a single parking garage. Destroying 3 cultural buildings for 1 garage, that's terrible. That's a terrible trade off. So I'm going to be guessing what the blank is. So the words I'm thinking of before even looking at the options are terrible, foolish, wasteful, destructive, words like that, damaging, counterproductive. So it has to be something negative. I'm sure this is something negative as well, which is the first thing we talked about. So now let's look at the options. Ambitious. Ambitious is a very positive word, and it's not correct for this one. Short-sighted. That's exactly what it is. You gain an advantage short term, but long term, it's a very bad decision. And short-sighted is a negative word. So this is exactly what we're looking for. Economical, well, the sentence is not giving me any clues on it being economical, right? So all of these things come together. All of these tips that I talked about, they come together for you to answer these questions. So the sentence is telling you what word to look for. So we have our list. We said terrible, um, destructive. So these are the things I'm looking for. And short-sighted is exactly the one. Popular, yeah, the sentence is not telling me anything about it being popular. The sentence is telling me that the mayor did something negative. Short-sighted is the correct answer. So here's your technique the next time you're taking words in context questions. First, read the sentence. Then look at clues of what it should be. Is it a positive tone? Is it a negative tone? What is this text telling me? And with that clue, with those clues, come up with your own answers. They don't have to be fancy words, just the first things that come to mind. I don't know, like in our example, we had, okay, it's destructive, it's wasteful, it's bad, it's terrible, it's whatever, right? So come up with your own words. You can write them down or have them in your mind, 2, 3 of them. It's like a list, it's like a shopping list, and then you go to the options to see which one is close to your shopping list, which one is needed for you to complete this sentence. So it's less like guessing the answer and it's more like matching the answer to what should make sense in this sentence. So the sentence itself is very, very important. Only this tip alone can increase your score significantly. Now, for these kind of questions, you have a target. You have a target and you're comparing the options to this target and see which one fits best. Pillar number 2, roots and patterns beat flashcards. So we can't memorize the whole dictionary. We can't memorize I don't know, 2,000 words on flashcards. Of course, it's there are just too many words in the English language to just master and learn so that we can ace the SAT with them. What you can do is learning roots and blocks that happen over and over again in academic texts. For example, you can focus on prefixes. Prefixes are pieces that come before a word. For example, if you have de before the word, it's probably related to lowering, bringing away, bringing down, or something negative. For example, you have derail, de escalate, decrease. So when you see this prefix de, you can possibly guess what the word means. Another one is a, which means without, apolitical, atypical, which means not typical, not political. So when you see a complicated word, you can break it down into these pieces and have a better guess at what this could mean. Then you have roots like facile means simple, so you have facilitate, make something easier. Bene is good, benevolent, benefit, or nom relates to name. Nominate, nomenclature. So when you see a big word, then you can break it down to prefixes, suffixes that come after it, and then the root, which is in the middle. Of course, this cannot be applied to every single word in the dictionary, but a lot of the times it helps a lot in academic reading. I do have a cheat sheet for all of these kind of prefixes and roots in the links of the description. It's completely free. Go ahead and check it out. Pillar number 3, logic, logic, logic. Okay, so let's say you've had your clues, you looked at the words, you know, your prefixes, your suffixes, your roots, everything, you've done everything, and you still don't know what the word means. Don't panic. It's normal and it happens to everyone. And this is where logic comes in, where elimination becomes much more important than your vocabulary list, right? And this is exactly what the SAT wants to test: your reasoning, your logic. Can you connect the dots? Can you eliminate some choices and finally reach the correct answer, even if you don't know the exact meaning of that word? So, can you use logic and reasoning to eliminate wrong choices and get to the correct answer, even if you don't fully know what it means? So that's a skill the SAT wants you to have. First golden rule is this: all SAT answers are completely correct, right? So it has to be correct. Like, there's no way it's kind of true, it's sort of right. So maybe there's a word you know, and it's kind of right, it's sort of right, it's okay, but it's not perfect for the blank, right? And then you have another choice, which is just a very difficult word that you don't know. You can't eliminate that unfamiliar word. You can't get rid of that. But what if you're stuck between these two and you've eliminated the other two answers? Here it becomes interesting. As I said, the answers are completely correct on the SAT. They're not kind of okay, kind of works, that's sort of right, so let's put that as the answer. No. So if the word you know is kind of true, you're not really happy putting it as the answer, this could be a trap. This word that you know may be one of those words that most students know, and all of them are thinking, oh, it's kind of true, but it could be an SAT trap. And that mystery word could be the right answer. Second, learn the traps. The traps happen every single time in every single test. I've made a full video about some of the traps up here that you can check out after watching this video. But some of these are very famous, like using extreme words, using recycled language, half right, half wrong answers. Some of you might know them, and if not, check out the video. If you can only spot the standard SAT traps, you can already eliminate some of the answers. I've got another cheat sheet for that in the description as well. Here's another one that I don't see many people talk about, but the SAT sometimes uses familiar words, everyday words, to trick students. For example, let's say the word fluid. Fluid means liquid. So you see the answer choices, you're like, liquid? No, that doesn't make sense. But there are second meanings to some words. For example, fluid can mean flexible, changeable, or adaptable. So don't just eliminate a word quickly because you know the meaning of it. Think if there's a second meaning to it as well that fits this context better. So now put everything that I said together. The charge of the sentence. Is it positive or is it negative? Find clues and guess. Eliminate the answers and spot the traps. You didn't learn new vocabulary today, but these skills help you improve your SAT score significantly. I'm gonna say it again. The SAT is not about dictionary, it's about reasoning. Now, as I promised, I'm not anti-vocabulary in any way, but there's a better method to study new words, and that is exposing yourself to real English content. Pick up a magazine like National Geographic or the New York Times or the Scientific American. These are really good sources to actually read. Read the articles. There's some of them are really interesting as well. When I was preparing for my exams, some of them are really interesting. So this does two things at once. They expose you to these sophisticated academic vocabulary in a real world natural context, and it helps you read faster because you're reading more and you're more comfortable. You've seen such words in context and it's not a new thing to you once you're sitting on the SAT exam. So when you're reading these, you might come across some interesting words. Words like ephemeral, ubiquitous, those famous words, right? So then you can write those down and you remember, oh, I saw it about in that article about whales and I know a story about this. Now I know what ubiquitous means. Learning in this way and even writing them down is better than having a flashcard of many different words, random words somebody chose, and then just one word that's the translation of it. Of course, even that is not bad, but it's not super efficient, right? So if you want to use flashcards, if you want to use lists, make sure to study the definition of those words, not just a one word meaning, and read an example of that word used in context. But what I recommend is actually reading stuff. Do this consistently and you'll be mastering SAT vocabulary in no time. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe, and if you want to learn with me personally through courses, join our community of other learners, all the links and goodies are below. The method with this problem, the problem with this method is